Okay, so welcome back, everybody. We are officially live streaming. We took 3 minutes so that I could get the live stream prepared. Just to confirm, today is our last God is group. So I want to thank everybody, and especially Reverend Phil for guiding and facilitating these groups. And during the three minutes or so, I asked you guys to kind of think about some things that you learned over the 3.5 years we've been doing this. And perhaps we'll reconvene kind of at the end, and I invite you to bring those things forward in today's discussion if you'd like to, or just keep them in your heart for the 12th step, which is our focus for today. So once again, welcome to God is Study Group, where ultimately our purpose is to learn to take each step forward in love and ask ourselves, what would we be doing if we knew that an infinite source of unconditional love was flowing through us and to us, guiding us with affirmative directive in every given moment. So we have been and are continuing to explore the 12 steps, one step at a time, through the book titled God Realization, Learn to Listen to the Voice of Love, the Gospel of Reverend Phil. So welcome everybody today. And today we are discussing the 12th step, the final step. Reverend Phil, would you like to, since this is your book, introduce us to the 12th step?
Be happy to. Blessings and greetings, everyone.
Blessings and greetings.
The steps, as I've talked about them, are transformative. We start on the first step and we meet ourselves in self-centeredness, in basically having a false deity. And as we go through the steps, that transforms. So the 11th step is the step that comes before the 12th step. And it talks about improving our conscious contact. And we do that through meditation and prayer. And the 12th step tells us that that's a spiritual awakening. It says, having had a spiritual awakening, we improve and seek knowledge of God's will for us and the power to carry it out. That's the awakening. But it's not a singular event. It's about a change in lifestyle. 12th step is taking us to the end of the journey on the 12 steps by basically telling us that we should no longer be self-centered. We should be looking at how we could be of service to others. The concept of practicing these principles in all our affairs and carrying a message. We're here to pass on, to give away what we were so freely given. And with that, we are no longer practicing selfish, self-centered behaviors. We are no longer worshiping false gods, which we covered in the first step and talked about again in the third and fourth. It's about having the belief reinforced that there's a power greater than ourselves. And now we're here to deal with that power. Again, that word improve in the 11th step is so important because it's not all of a sudden happening in the 11th step, that spiritual awakening. It's been ongoing as we have worked the steps and learned how to implement them in our lives. We become transformed. So that spiritual awakening is about, how can I be of service? How can I make this world a better place because I lived in it, walked it? All of that is the spiritual awakening. So the service can take any different forms. You can do more than one type of service, but you need to be, if you have actually worked and implemented the step in your life, no longer just what's good for me. It's what is God's will for me. Of again, the improvement, the third step. We acknowledge God's will for us, making a decision. What voice am I listening to? We start that process of seeking the voice of spirit that's within us for guidance. We learn to recognize basically the voice of shadow, which gives us harsh lessons. We need to have a harsh lesson, we can give it to ourselves. But the steps have given us a choice, and with that choice, an understanding and awareness of that we are making a choice that's going to create some form of harshness to it, or a couple of forms of harshness to it. We don't need to walk that path anymore. We don't need harsh lessons. We have learned to recognize the physical signs of the voice of shadow and know not to go there. Again, we just practice these principles in all our affairs and carry this message to others. And that starts the next part of the journey. There is a belief system in place in a lot of 12-step fellowships that basically, when you finish the 12th step, you start the steps over again. I don't subscribe to that. That's not what my guidance has shown me. We don't need to keep looking at ourselves. That's shadow. We will have all the tools we need if we really worked and integrated these steps into our lives. And to repeat, be redundant, is not what we're here to do. We're here to help others. We're not here to keep looking at ourselves. So basically, that's the 12th step. That's the 12 steps. And let's open this up for questions or comments. Is anybody in there?
You know, throughout all of these discussions and these steps and all the folks that I know that I see observing them, and the folks in this group, which I know more intimately than most of the others, the whole concept about disattachment, or the concept of the lack of expectation, which I kind of think is very similar to the concept of disattachment. You have to be disattached from expectations. And that's the one I struggle with my entire life. I just And it's not that because I am who I am, I expect other people to be, or because I am who I am and how I interact with other people. I want to see my life have a positive impact on people and the society. I just want people to be good citizens, to know themselves well enough that they can be true to who they are and then know the goodness that's within everyone and to be good people and not to suffer. I mean, but I just want that so much that I can't disattach myself from the expectation that when people like the folks who are in this group live out in this world and impact positive energy into this world, that I want to believe that it has a positive effect. I just want to believe that.
The
I
positive
can't.
effect it has is on you. Anybody else, you won't always know that you're impacting somebody. They may be touched by it, but you don't get to see somewhere down the road how being touched by it changes their approach to life. The only power we have is over self, and that's part of 12 step. We carry this message to others and practice these principles in all our affairs. That's all we can do. Once it leaves our mouth, once it leaves our body, it's no longer ours. We no longer own it. We no longer have control over what gets done to it or not to it. We do this because it's the way we come to believe we want to live our life. And the serenity that comes with living a life of spirit is the benchmark and is basically the reward for the work we do.
But don't you own it right up until you give it away? That's, and where are you really giving it away? When you put it out there, when
Yeah,
you're just being who you are. I mean,
but just
can't there,
because I have an intuitive sense that something is faulty with somebody's actions or statements doesn't mean I have the power to change them. They have the power to change them. I've touched on this in the past. When I'm in a meeting and I hear somebody share something, there are times that just the sense of I need to offer some input. So I'll wait till the end of the meeting and I'll go to that person, and my basic opening line is, can I stick my 2 cents into your share? They can say yes, no, they can say yes and mean no, they could mean no and say yes. Up until the point of me sharing it, I have control over what I'm saying. But as soon as it leaves me, what they do with it has no longer anything to do with me. And my only basic reward, again, is the serenity I have from not being stuck within my own self and thinking, go over there and tell them this incredible story about me and my life and this and that. No, I go there and I carry the message, a spiritual message, and that's all I can do. And it's up to me to know when the message I've carried is finished being presented, and not overdo it, not underdo it. But I have no power over how somebody deals with what I have to say. If I am using that as a benchmark, then I'm giving away my power, allowing somebody's response to me to dictate to me what value of accuracy I have And again, it comes back to where's where's my serenity? I'm giving it away to somebody because if they're not paying attention to me, I get all caught up on why aren't you listening?
Yeah, I have a question about this. Kind of going back to what you were saying earlier, and Don, I appreciate your comment on that because kind of has something to do with what I'm about to say. But so Reverend Phil, you had said that the 12 steps is, and you say this in the book too, is both the completion of a spiritual journey and the beginning of a more advanced spiritual journey. But in the 12-step program, you had also said that once you work the 12-step, in a sense, you're not reverting back, but you're kind of reorienting and revisiting the steps from step 1 to 12 again.
But that's being focused on self. It's not necessary.
For
I
my,
don't need to capture every instance in my life that I feel harmed me. I have the information I need
Mhm.
to have it 100% to try to get it, quote, perfect.
So there
It's
are
not
no
what these
steps
steps
though.
are about. I'm sorry?
Well, are there any steps that are advanced beyond the 12 step? Because it seems like it kind of that concept of revisiting the first step and then that's it. You kind of continuously like transition through this cycle of 1 through 12, and then revisit 1 through 12 again. Kind of keeps you limited in a way, limited perspective there. But as human beings, we're also imperfect. I've not seen or met one person who is like beyond, maybe you once in a while, but not always. That, those initial steps, because the ego just it's there.
But we
I
don't
think,
pay attention to it. We don't allow ourselves to be dictated to by shadow.
yeah, but for most
I
of
know
us,
why I use drugs. I have a very clear picture. I had an abusive father, and I was told I was not okay. Bottom line, I was judged by my performance, and I didn't get to judge my performance. Others were in charge of judging my performance.
Uh-huh.
That's all I ever needed to know. The rest of it is redundant. It's rehashing the same stuff over and over again. The 12 steps says get out of self and work with others. So instead of sitting there trying to remember every time my father did something
Oh,
that hurt me, that doesn't change anything. Whether I know it from 10 instances or 1,000 instances, it's the same. It doesn't change.
yeah, but
I
don't you
don't need
think that,
to.
go
okay.
ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, look, I think for me, I need the meditation. I need the prayer. I need the introspection. When I start acting up, sometimes it's just like, God bless, man. Why are you acting like that? There are, there are times where I need the practice, but call it exercise, whatever. I need to go back in and say, wait a minute. You need to let that go because sometimes, don't you think that some of these past experiences emerge, they reemerge, they bubble up to the surface. And at times we need to just relook at that, not as to ponder it and to let it control us and give our power up to it. It's like, whoop, there that darkness is again. I need to get back into the light and move forward. And I think for a lot of people, like I believe that the 7 people that are in this meeting that I'm aware of right now, are exceptional people in the sense that we're here in the meeting together, which means you've decided that you want to engage with other spirits, other people to endeavor toward your enlightenment, endeavor toward your awareness, whatever you want to call it. We're all in this together. But the reason we go back or go forward to the next gathering or the next conversation that we have with people that we respect and care for, and those that we don't, that we want to learn from things is because I need the exercise. You know, after I finish this, I have 2 phone calls I have to make to people that are going through some really tough times right now. And then after that, I'm going to the gym because I need to exercise my cardiovascular system. And I have a couple important books that I'm reading, and I need to exercise my mind and my spirit. But don't you think that that is for the majority of the people that go through and track through? And yes, I'll say this, and then as brief as I can. Many people go back into the program because it's another form of addiction. And as another form of addiction, they're wallowing around in their own bullshit and suffering and misery. And that's sad. I'm sorry they're doing that. And they're giving their power up to that. But for me, I go back into methods to help me help we, just chill out. And sometimes I can go back to the first step.
Okay, can I just intervene for a
I'm
second,
finished. Thank you.
Reverend Phil? This is reminding me of what, like, initially I was wanting to say, or wanted to bring up, and that is that reverting back through the steps 1 through 12 after completing 12, which we never really complete. In fact, it would be great if we could just advance and move forward from step 12, but it seems like as human beings, we really like to have a methodology to do that sometimes. What is it? What does that mean?
Well, the
But
methodology is there on the 12th step. Carry this message and practice these principles. We are no longer concerned with ourselves. We are here to carry a spiritual message and help others with their permission to help improve their life and do a better job with the life that they've got.
which is wonderful. And this idea that recovery is lifelong. What is your perspective on that, Reverend Phil? I'd love to hear what your perspective is on that, because I feel like it's kind of dynamic compared to what.
The steps are transformative. If we don't follow the guidance that the steps are providing for us, we don't get the benefit of the full or partial transformation. I no longer have to keep looking at myself. I have, in the 11th step, through prayer, meditation and prayer, to improve my conscious contact with God. I allow that to be the vehicle that guides me to what would be a spiritual demonstration in the situation I am finding myself in. So there's something happens, whatever something is, it doesn't matter. I get to choose. I could react to it from shadow, which means that I cop a resentment to somebody or something, or I demonstrate love. I pray for them or it or whatever. And that becomes the guidepost for my life. Am I demonstrating my divinity or am I demonstrating my humanity? I'm not here to demonstrate my humanity. I'm here to grow past it. And that's what the 12th step is about. That's why a 12-step program works. it's not dictated to by any particular book, or people interpret their lives through the principles, the spiritual principles of the steps. And how well am I doing? Am I making this world a better place because I've lived it? And that's really what the 12 step is about. It's the start of the next phase of the journey. I no longer dissect myself. I check spiritual principles and pass along the input, the intuitiveness, the information that spirit has given me, which is what I'm seeking in the 11th step. The meditation helps me recognize that intuitive sense. I no
Yeah.
longer ask the question, how is this going to benefit me? I
Right.
ask the question, how is this going to make the world a better place?
Has there ever been a book written called Beyond the 12 Steps?
No, not that I'm aware of.
That just came to mind. There's a book for you.
Maybe you should go write it.
Oh my, well, I don't know enough about, yeah, because this is, well, I don't know. I mean, this is part of it too, is that, yeah, I don't, Don, were you gonna say something? I don't remember what I
Oh,
said.
ultimately, I was.
Okay, go ahead.
Language is I think for humans our number one. We can't tend to get to our spirit and our hearts and spirits as easily as we can through our brains, and we do that with language. But I think about this process as not a road to recovery, but a path to enlightenment.
Mm-hmm.
It's
If that's
by
possible.
saying that it's a road to recovery, it's giving power up to the addictions and the diseases and the malfunctioning of our previous existence. But if we say that we're on a path to enlightenment, then we more orient ourselves in the awakening as opposed to dragging with us that from which we need to recover. Does that make sense to anybody?
It's a
Yep.
matter of words. That's why the book is titled God Realization.
Right.
We are here to bring to the forefront our spirit, our divinity, and demonstrate that and teach that and help others learn it and pass it on. And there's one thing I wanted, so I almost lost track of. Don, when you were talking about having a shadow-based experience and how to deal with it, that's the 6th and the 7th step. The tools are built into the steps. The 6th step was when we are contemplating following shadow. The 7th step is when we are actively following shadow. That it's now no longer a thought, it's an action. And how do I deal with it? How do I correct course? The steps give us everything we need to keep moving forward. And we just got to learn from teachers. We learn from our experience how to implement them. And it's not about not having the shadow. We don't get rid of the shadow. We touched on that in the first step. We learn to recognize the shadow and not allow it to guide us. Is that adding any clarity for anybody?
Sure. We need to process these continuously.
We need to be aware. What am I thinking? What am I saying? What am I doing? And what voice is guiding all that?
Deb, were you gonna say something?
I just think this is like a shift for me because I think that I've been on this self-development course for so many decades that I just made it a way of life. And I see through, especially after Phil's discussion this morning, is that has been a perpetual stalling, as if I'm never going to be fixed or I'm never going to be okay. And it may have been a subtle, realization, but it's really profound for me because, and Phil and I have had, or Phil has had this discussion with me, is just act. And I think what I'm hearing, I hope this is correct, is that, or correct me if it's not correct, is that to integrate the steps enough to be able to identify them and move on, rather than just be stuck in the step, which I have made a practice of, I believe.
I mean, again, the 11th step uses the word improve our conscious contact. We have been developing it from the very first step. So now it's calling upon us to take that development and move on to the next level, the spiritual awakening. That we are now committing ourselves to listening to and following the guidance of spirit, as opposed to rehashing everything that redundancy of shadow.
Yeah. And that can be like, modern day therapy, just saying, like, let's rehash what you've been through, and then it, brings it up again. And I think that's so, I really do think that can be an issue with conventional therapy, is constantly focusing on the problems. What is
Exactly.
But
If you're constantly focusing on the problem, you're stuck in the problem.
right. But so and some people are really ready to move beyond the problem, like to the point where they will clarify, like, I don't want to talk about the past experience. And that's not a form of resistance per se. That's like literally saying,
who's interpreting it.
Yeah, exactly. Like they're ready to move on. They don't want to focus on it. Like, been there, done that. That was the first however many years of life.
No. The vast
If we were to-
majority of those people have never really addressed those issues.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
afraid of them. They're profoundly, deeply frightened to go back in and
Right.
discover something about themselves. And because of that, they'll never move on.
Right.
You got to be able to open your eyes and open your heart and mind to what happened and then move on. Because
Yes,
otherwise it's going to be dragging you down and you're never going to know what subliminally is holding you down.
Right. No, that's true. It's always in context to the individual person and their, as Reverend Phil would say, the karmic state, or state of readiness, so to speak. And I remember, because when I was working with Reverend Phil, one thing you did differently, Reverend Phil, was you weren't focusing on the details of anything in the past or anything. Like it was, and the interventions were not like, okay, let's have you heard of CBT? Let's engage you in cognitive restructuring or downward arrow or whatever it is to get to the core beliefs. Like, you were pretty much working the 12th step. And that was like reminding me what I already knew. And I think you knew that that's where I was at spiritually, and that's what I was ready to hear. And that's kind of part of the therapeutic process too. But and that's why it worked for me, because I was kind of not like past or beyond or anything like that, but like, certain coping techniques. Like, I needed to hear a spiritual message that really resonated, that I could bring it, implement, embody and bring with me in my daily life. So, and Deb,
one
thank
of
you
the
for saying
things
that.
doing
Deb, you made a really good point. I hope we could talk about that further.
One of the things that doing the work that you're describing was shown to me was people didn't show up at my door by accident. That I had guidance, a modality that was different than most of the other practitioners in the field. So I didn't get into motivational interviewing or any of that other stuff. I wasn't looking for evidence-based practices. God is an evidence-based practice in my book. So I would, in a basic sense, go right down to business. I wasn't going to waste time with these other modalities that get you stuck and perpetuate the counselor, the therapist, the psychologist.
Yeah, yeah. And insurance panels, unfortunately, that conversation of God is not evidence-based. So, insurance panels aren't good. That's not going to be a network. But it's powerful stuff.
I think the conversation about God is inevitable. It just may not be spoken to in terms that most spiritual people understand. In the counseling the discussions that I have had with people and do continuously throughout my life, I think just restating, rearranging for people where they are in the moment. I mean, a good counselor is a counselor that can establish a rapport by recognizing where people are in the moment and being with them there in the moment. And most people are disturbed and frustrated and in pain and suffering and remorse and all those other things that we let overpower us. But I find that if you can just rearrange everything that people have before them and just create that in a form that gives them a vision of the spirit, that gives them a vision of something to be grateful for, that it lessens the impact of all those other issues that they've given their power up to. I find that to be
And
a really
that's the
effective way of
steps.
sharing with people.
That's the steps. They're empowering. Again, shadow interferes and says, well, the first step says powerless. And it doesn't allow the individual whose shadow is talking to them to meet themselves in the reality of what is powerless and what is powerful.
Yeah, so true.
The first sentence in God realization is religion a broken concept. I could have substituted as therapy a broken concept because I believe between religion and therapy, they have created the misinformation that puts this world in the mess it's in. And it's about taking in the therapeutic model, taking the client, the patient, and going for that 100%. You got to know everything, and nothing changes. If they ever get that 100%, then they'll like, what now? I'm still dealing with the same issues. It doesn't empower them. It basically says knowledge is what's important.
Well, and here's part of it too,
What's
is
important.
the conventional approach actually requires the clinician to, in a sense, like this terribly said, I'm just gonna say, but exploit the sensitivities or the issues, because that's what insurance will pay for. Insurance will not pay For a progress note.
Hey, Kirsten, could you be a little closer to your mic, please? You're really fuzzy for me.
So one of the issues with conventional medicine these days is that insurance requires that what they want to see on the documentation is that that person continues to struggle with a certain issue because that's what they're going to pay for. So if you have a progress note that is, oh, on a 1 to 10 scale, this client reports anxiety has, reduced down to 4. So it's more than manageable. That person is obviously able to regulate themselves on a daily basis. They're not going to pay for that. And that's one of the issues with, and I'm not afraid to talk about it either, because it's something that's wrong with corrupt with the system. Yeah. So if we're looking at
The
like
system can't be healing if the individual practicing it are corrupt.
the administration and yeah.
They can't give away what they don't have. You can't give away healing if you're corrupt.
Right.
I really agree with that. And my philosophy with my work is I want to work myself out of a job because I want the people that choose to work with me to learn what I'm teaching and to practice it so that they don't need me anymore.
Good for you.
And what I'm learning is that I don't think I can effectively do that until I know it, which is what Reverend Phil was just saying, is I can't give away what I don't have. So my journey right now, which I'm learning at this moment, is to let go of my wounds. Because if I can let go of my wounds, then the people I work with are more apt to. Because I've been way invested in them.
I have to, can I share something too with that? There was one client that I had over the years who came to me and said, I'm doing really well. And we took a break for a while, and it told me that he relapsed so that he could continue to work with me in therapy. That's messed up. And so I said, well, he said, I don't know what else I'd work on, but I feel like I need to talk to somebody, in the week, during the week and everything. And that's what the therapy became about. I think
Just another sign of a broken system.
Mm-hmm. So what do you do? The 12th step, that's like beyond, that is solution oriented, and it's beyond maintenance. No, maybe it is maintenance.
It's giving it away, demonstration.
Right. Deb, can I ask you a question? In your practice, like what are some helpful things or tools that you have used to kind of maintain that solution focus rather than like reverting back to the problem?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I'm not sure how to answer it. I think a lot of my work is intuitive, based on the person. But it's all focused on wellness. That's the premise of it, is what do they want? So it's I guess it's a little bit of coaching, is not what's the problem, but what do they want? I'm not sure, but I focus on, like healthy diet, healthy lifestyle, relationships, not in depth because I'm not a therapist and I don't want to be a therapist, but I am working with an individual. I have a lot of growth to do in that area. So I'm not saying I have it, but that's the structure of it, is it's based on wellness. And
Mhm.
that saying is what you focus on is what you get.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good one.
I didn't catch that. It broke up.
What you focus on is what you get.
Okay.
Yeah, the kind of law of attraction thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, wellness. Thank you for sharing that, because I think for those listening,
Every client shows up at every practitioner with the same problem. They're in pain and they don't know how to deal with it.
can you guys hear? Oh, okay, go ahead, Reverend Phil. Sorry about that. There's an echoing.
No, that was a standalone sentence.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think focusing on, and that's really, I like to hear other people's perspective when they're doing coaching, therapy, whatever it may be. That wellness, defined by the client, um, based on their quality of life kind of standards that they have for themselves, is really key. And I think sometimes we, talking on an individual level, sometimes we focus on our problems more so than all the maybe wonderful things that are going on in our lives. But getting back to the 12 step, that is what I think essentially about, is focusing on the wellness, being of service.
Well, that's why it has a first step. That is the first step. We get to meet ourselves in our pain. It's not just about drugs. It can be about anything and everything can make our lives unmanageable.
And I can't tell you how many clients that I've worked with who would love to be of service, and they actually bring it up quite often. Their desire to work with as a peer support worker, or become a LADAC, counselor, because they have that natural kind of intuitive feeling about that it is healing to help others.
That's the 12th step, giving it away. We keep what we have by giving it away. Basic spiritual law of abundance. If I'm hoarding it, then I'm saying it's of limited amount. When I give it away, I make the demonstration on the belief that this is infinite, that it cannot be exhausted. Wow, everybody's so quiet.
What you're saying is really profound for me, so I'm trying to integrate it. Simple but profound.
If it ain't simple, it ain't spiritual.
But Reverend Philin, on page 81, you say, this is the God realization. As the final step, step 12 creates the tone for the preceding 11 steps by establishing their collective destination. For our newly created fellowship, the goal is precise God realization. It also tells us that the path of God realization is equally precise, the result of applying the preceding 11 steps in our lives. We are all spiritual beings, and the only qualification for God realization is the implementation of the lessons the 12 steps provides in our lives.
Exactly.
We are divine. Here's the key sentence here. We are divine, and this cannot be taken from us. It just patiently awaits a realization of it.
The more we immerse ourselves in spirit, the healthier we become.
So the last sentence here on 82 is, remember, our higher power is a power capable of accomplishing things that are beyond our ability to imagine and or comprehend. So,
Just a restatement of step 2. Just a reminder.
and then you also say, depending
That's really
upon-
helpful when you say it's, it's a reminder of step 2 or whatever the step is. That's very helpful for me. So thanks.
Me too. I wish we did that in more 12-step meetings. Because it's like, kind of brings you back to each step and then reviewing that, like in your own mind. It's a good way to remember the steps.
Yes.
Like Gandhi once said, be the change you want to see in the world. If you ain't seeing it, do it.
Well, that is a wonderful reminder. Thank you. And so it's 9:57. We're coming to a close of the the meeting today. I want to thank you, everybody, for being here today and for your bringing in your lovely voices and what's been coming to heart over this last week and into today's session. But also, Reverend Phil, as you say in the book, it is a culmination of all the previous steps, and this has been a culmination of all the previous years. Bringing into this God is study group. Any comments or questions, or just kind of
I would like to thank Reverend Phil for all the time and energy he's put into helping other people. Whether they can pay for it or not, he's been there and supported so many people through their trials and tribulations. He is the change you want to see in the world. So I just want to thank you.
I second that.
Yes, we
Well
wanted to
said.
thank both Kirsten and Reverend Phil for the many years. Although we didn't ever speak much, we always listened, and the thoughts and prayers will always be in our hearts. And thank you again.
Yeah, thank you both for tuning in.
Yes, it's been an honor to walk this path with you all. And just because we're not meeting on Sundays anymore doesn't mean I'm not going to be available. If something comes up and you need to talk, you have my phone number, call me. If you reach my answering, just leave a message and I'll always call you back.
Yeah, and Reverend Phil, so your contact information is, and also we have our emails. So if we would like to send out like an update or a collaborative kind of, group notice, or something good has come up, whatever it may be, or just anything, we have that. We have all the emails for that too. And if you would like some contact information, I can certainly email you that information. Just send me a message on the New Earth Counseling or Reverend Phil. Reverend Phil, what is your email address? Just if you feel comfortable putting that.
Reverend Phil at churchoftheonegod.org, lowercase, all spelled out. Well, that's not really true. It's REV. Reverend is spelled out. REVPHIL at churchoftheonegod.org.
Yeah, okay, there it is. So here you guys have it, and God bless everybody, and take care. Be well.
Thank you.
blessed.
You too.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Best wishes.
Thanks, Deb. You too.